the meeting of the policy committee, and all others, staff members who are here, welcome. We're glad everyone is here. Hope everyone is feeling good and healthy. And if you would, join me in a moment of prayer. Merciful God, we thank you for another day. We thank you that we're able to get up and move and have our being on this day. And we pray that as we deliberate, as we think, as we prayerfully consider policies that will impact our school system and specifically our students and staff and the community, we pray that you will guide us with your perfect will and your omnipotent hand. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Many of the policies have been revised in this particular series. There were a handful where there were no action, and of course, a substantial amount of it does have to do with our fiscal goals, and that's the title of the first section, the 8,000 section. And of course, we're focusing on the whole policy, but even more focused on the lines and parts that are in red font. And I just had circled that all decisions regarding the use of financial resources will be consistent with the board's objective of providing all students. And we know that speaks volumes when we say all students, because that takes in ethnic groups and students with various conditions for learning. I'm glad that's there, and I don't know how else to word that, but simply all students. Are there any comments on 8,000? Okay. Hearing none, I hear a motion that we accept it.
So moved.
Second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Move on to 8,100.
Sorry, are there any other board members present? Do we need to have any other board members? I'm just asking, because I don't know.
That's a good question.
I looked around, I was thinking the same thing, I'm like, there's nobody else here.
Are there any online, Cole?
I knew Miss Brenda couldn't be here.
Henry declined the invitation.
I know it was publicized.
Right.
Yes.
That is a good question. Now, Mr. Brady's not here to answer that.
Well, this is the finance committee, correct?
The policy committee.
I'm sorry, policy committee. So this group ought to be able to do that because you do have quorum with the folks that's in the room. So it's not board member specific in terms of.
Okay.
Answer the question, yes, we do.
That would be my interpretation.
Right.
That, you know, we have official individuals here comprising this meeting. And that, to me, that's sufficient.
Right.
Okay. Budget planning and adoption. And a lot of this, of course, is self-explanatory. There's only 2 lines there that are in red, and that's under letter A, number 1, establishing the priorities of the school system, recognizing that providing students the opportunity to receive a sound basic education, bringing the student success will always be a paramount concern. I have a question, and this is somewhat general, but I'm still not up to speed on our relationship, the Public Schools of Robeson County relationship with the county commissioners. And I know there is a fiduciary relationship, and again, I'm not completely up to speed on that, but that sentence in the second paragraph, enable the board and the county commissioners. And that sounds like we're paired, of equal status there, and that's not the only, reference to the county commissioners. And I'm just skipping over because it's mentioned again in 8510, page 2 of 3. And this is about providing the board a quarterly budget to actual statement. I'm reading number 12 in the blueprint. That includes budgeted accounts and it goes on, and then providing a copy to the board and notice to the county commissioners of any report received from the teachers and state employees retirement system. And so my question is just how much impact, what is our relationship with the county commissioners? Because that's some pretty deep issues there.
It is, and that's a good question. Erica and I've had the conversation. We're going to request, as is the norm, to appear before the county commissioners to share our budget requests. And we think that will address that issue, that they can direct, and if we need to go line item by line item, that we can do. Last year, we did not get that opportunity to appear before them for the purpose of these policies. That's our intent, to request it this year to do that.
And so, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So while our funding from the county commissioners represent a very small portion of our total budget, the county commissioners and the board have the relationship is more important when it comes to debt and how the district itself, because we cannot regulate our own revenue, requires approval from the county commissioners to enter into new debt, building schools and so forth. So overall, as far as growth in the community for the school system, requires a lot of approval levels from the Board of Education. Number 13 in specific terms discusses the pension spiking rules that went into effect a few years ago. So where we may have an employee who makes more than $100,000, there may be a pension spiking invoice that's issued from the retirement system to the school districts. Several school districts had not been able to pay that in the past, and they had to go to their county commissioners to request funding to help cover that cost. And that's why that is there in specific terms. And we do submit that as we get those files once a year to the board and to the county commissioners of anybody who falls on that list. You know that out. But that's in specific relationship to pension spiking.
Okay, and that clears it up for me a little bit, in that when we're reviewing our budget, as we do at every meeting, every school board meeting, and maybe I've missed it, but I don't see anything in the budget where county commissioners are directly funding a particular line item or a particular section. It sounds to me like in specific issues, and you use the word specific just then, that it addresses, and it looks like a lot of it is vested in the retirement, relates to retirement.
And the county commissioners are required by law to give us county appropriations. And so that pays for several different things in our budget. That's why you don't see, like, let's say, one line item. We use those appropriations to pay most of our maintenance costs and the costs associated with the Board of Education, the per diems, other expenses and so forth. Then in our capital budget, we get sales tax revenue from the county. And our county is also responsible for, they're kind of like the middleman for our lottery revenue. It's sent to the county and we have to request reimbursement for them for use of lottery funds. So that is more into the relationship in the capital funds.
Okay, so they serve as in an intermediary role between us and the.
Just for the lottery funds. Everything else is a direct relationship between us and the Department of Public Instruction.
Gotcha, thank you. Okay. So we move on then to, if there are no further questions. Is everybody okay with 8100? Any questions? Is there a motion that we accept and approve language
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Motion carries. Budget resolution, 8110. I've got another question, and I'm trying to educate myself here. What exactly is a budget resolution? I know what resolution means, I know what budget means, but give me our definition of a budget resolution.
So the budget resolution, and I submitted the budget resolution in November of 2020 was the last one I submitted, is a summarization of all the line item details of our budget into a purpose function form. So every purpose function has, like the 5,000s are instructional, 6,000s, they all have a general relationship to the budget, and they get lumped together by those purpose codes. And when I submitted that last November, that's what our auditors use when they do our audit. They look at everything by purpose function. And they take all of our expenditures separated by funds and look at it by those purpose functions. And that tells them whether we're over or under budget.
Okay. Thank you, that's very clear.
And I do have a request for B, the budget amendments.
Okay.
I submit the budget resolution, which is approved by the board. It has a different statement. It says the superintendent may transfer amounts between functions, sub-functions, and objects of expenditure within a purpose as allowed by General Statute 433, excuse me. And in that particular general statute, there is no specific dollar amount included in that, and I would like to request that, and I don't know what the recommendation is from the school board trust, but
And Ms. Erica, you're talking about what's in yellow?
correct, the budget amendment.
Yeah, and all of that is unique to us.
So I would like to suggest we use whatever the state recommends as the generic response to those amendments and not include the $5,000 sub-function.
So are you saying, am I hearing this right, that we would actually strike the $5,000 that's mentioned in number 2?
That's correct.
Okay,
If not, we could find ourselves in a situation, especially at the end of the year, if we don't have a new state budget, that we would have to wait 30 days before we can take action because of that dollar amount, if we need to exceed that.
And the budget resolution is specifically presented to the board every year with the different language that gets approved. So that supersedes what's in the board policy, because this is acted on individually at the board meeting. So to me, it should be what the policy is, because this is what gets approved every time.
okay. And this would give us more latitude to go either way in terms of amount.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
And closing out the fiscal year, speeds up the
Correct.
process.
okay, that sounds reasonable. Are there any further discussion? Is there any further discussion on 8110 budget resolution? It's been explained very well.
But just to be clear, Ms. Erica, we're removing the statement, that whole number 2 statement. Okay.
Okay, do I hear a motion that we accept on the budget resolution 8110 as presented with the additions that have been suggested?
So moved.
Second, all in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Move on to 82. Grants and funding for special projects. Contracts with government funding entities must be consistent with General Statute 147, Article 6E and Article 6G. I'll have to admit, I did not look those up, but those are government statutes, so, we are bound to be consistent with government statutes in all cases, isn't that right?
That's great.
Okay. So, that's just, reiterating and making that clear. And for approval, the board must be notified of all funds awarded, and Ms. Erica does a wonderful job of keeping us posted on anything and everything financial, so I think we have a concern there. References down at the bottom are in red, cross references. Is there any other comments on 8210? Hearing none, do I hear a motion that we accept 8210 as presented?
So moved.
Second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Move on to 8220. And this, okay, there's another section related to contracts that I've got a lot of questions about, but, I do have underlined, and this is what I had underlined is not in red. I think, to me, the rest of it's straightforward about donations, real and personal property, form of a gift or request, foster community support for schools, improve the school system. As expression of the board's gratitude, superintendent shall provide appropriate recognition of donors. All right, that's straightforward. What I have a question about is in yellow, appraisal of a gift is the responsibility of the donor, as school system employees are not permitted to appraise gifts. Are we supposed to give carte blanche authority to the donor's appraisal without any question? Or do we have a checks and balances with that in some way?
Here's, you want to speak on that at all?
In the past, when we have accepted donations, they provide us what the value is, but now before we write a letter to that company or whatever for tax purposes, we make sure that it's pretty much within line. In other words, we just got some furniture donated to us by a company, and we took what they said and we took depreciation out on it, and for however many years old it was, then gave them a letter thanking them for their donation for that value, not for the full brand new value.
Right.
And in most cases, Mr. Gentry, what we receive are things, are items that you can easily Google and get like a fair market value for, which we do. I mean, we're not getting anything that is something we've never seen before or unusual types of items or donations. It's mostly day-to-day furniture, books, those type things that we can easily assess a value to. If it were something that did fit any of those categories, we would certainly reach out to the attorney before providing an official letter.
I was going to say, I'm sure Hugh's got some kind of process.
Well, and we have it set.
Even if it's nothing more than going and Googling it, you know, that's still a process.
Right, and we have had land donated to us, but that was brought before the board attorney for the board approval. So that would follow that process, anything of those dollar amounts. Normal day-to-day items, we're not going to give you a $100,000 letter for a phone, you know, or something's worth $200.
Get some common sense.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Should we increase that dollar threshold?
And to me, the language in red is straightforward. And really, the answer to my question is inherent in that red font area. Are there any other points, comments?
In section B, Mr. Gentry, there are 2 blanks we have to fill in. And the first one is, the superintendent may accept donations up to, and so we need to put a dollar amount in there.
Yeah, I guess I just drew this out of thin air, but my suggestion there is $5,000. Somebody else may have a different take. Big part?
Most other school districts use 90,
90?
90,000.
Wow.
And I think, Erica, does that go back in line with what we have in is it 6140? With that 90,000, I think that's the policy where that 90,000 keeps coming up.
Yes.
So does that mean then anything beyond the 90,000, requires board action to be received?
Correct.
And that's an important statement. Any donation offered with cash may not be accepted without approval of the board upon recommendations of the board attorney.
I'm sorry, Mr. Gentry. Back to A, the part about that's in where it talks about at least 1 month before offering a gift valued at over $250.
Right.
Owner shall provide the superintendent with written notification.
Right.
I don't know how the donor would know that. And that is not in most of the other districts' policy. They don't have that. So that to me is kind of a hard, I don't know how we would follow that policy, because most of the time what happens is we'll get a call on any day during the week to say, we have something we want to donate to the school system. And it happens very quickly in most cases. It doesn't happen within a month. Like, they don't go about a formal process. It's typically a phone call. So I would suggest that we strike that from the policy altogether, because it is something not required in the policy and something we added on our own.
Because my next step in that process would be to go to you and ask them to evaluate this and give me a dollar amount.
Right.
So I agree, we need to strike through, because that is an add-on from us, and then just follow what the written policy is on that.
That makes sense. It's really incumbent upon us to decide all those factors.
Correct.
Because
board.
part of that is whether we want to receive that gift. Has that purpose and
That's correct.
not just,
Good point. You getting that, Ms. Bob? All right. So we're on, still on 8220, page 2 of 3.
And again, that most districts use 90,000 for what the superintendent may accept for donations. And that kind of coincides with the state, policy about spending. It's around 90,000 that Mr. Bobby referenced. It's 6140.
6140, I believe, is the other policy.
Now here, we're talking about monetary donations.
Any,
We're out of the gifts category now, we're talking about money.
any type of,
Any type of donation,
donation.
whether it's
Monetary, whether it's equipment, whether it's any type of donation.
if you look at the policy, gift is a strike through, so they've taken that language out of the policy.
Okay? Thank you. All right. And that sentence where it says the board reserves the right to determine in each particular case the appropriateness of the donation and may accept or reject the donation as the board sees fit. I have a question about the history. Has that been an issue in the past about, well, we don't really want this truck, it's too old, or questionable as far as its function? I'm just asking, is there is there a history of running into snags with, because sometimes people, let's face it, want to get rid of something, it may not be in very good condition.
We don't,
Asking, is there been a problem?
Not really, and I mean, to really be honest, it's the optics of it. You really don't want to be in a position where you say no to something, and for the most part, if it has been something that way, then we would just send it to surplus or something like that.
Yeah.
You want to give it, we take it, there hasn't been many cases.
Try to keep-
Most of the time we get, it's really furniture or things like that. There've been some cases of some older computers that we didn't take because they were so far beyond what would have been acceptable by our technology department.
Want to try to keep everybody happy, because, you don't want to turn somebody away and turn them off.
Right.
Social Security Administration has given us a lot of technology items that we did not use, but to save face with them, because we have gotten good furniture from them.
Yeah.
We would take it, put it straight to our electronic recycler. That actually helped them and us. I mean, we got a few bucks off of it, but then they got rid of it without having to go through their federal process.
Good. Try to keep good relationships going. All right. And this paragraph in C kind of speaks to what we were just talking about. To what extent do we use crowdfunding? My concept of crowdfunding is we're involving a lot of people, a raffle or selling tickets for something is that crowdfunding?
Crowdfunding, when I think about it, is like GoFundMe or, what's the one that a lot of teachers use?
Donors
Donors Choose, thank you. So those are resources that I don't think we're gonna work through policies on them. We haven't gotten to those policies yet. But the teacher, like, Donors Choose, the teacher will put out on the website, whatever it is, if they're trying to buy, supplies to support a STEM project, then they'll get people to crowdfund that. We need to develop some policies on that. We don't currently have any that address it. But it's more like GoFundMe and things like that, not raffles and so forth. It's more where they put certain criteria out on websites and they get donors to give money to those specific projects.
Is there approval process for them to do that?
Not currently.
There is a crowdfunding policy. There is a crowdfunding policy under our current policies, but everything has to be approved by the superintendent first and foremost. And we don't have a proper procedures, guidelines set up for that at this time. That's why nothing has been officially done with that.
And the biggest thing that has come up that we've noticed is if a teacher leaves or deciding who owns the, whatever it is that they get from that. But most of those places, I know Donors Choose has it right on their website where it states that once it's in the school, it belongs to the school and not the teacher. And all of them are very clear in that. But that's the only issues that we've had to deal with in finance related to those websites.
And I think I heard you say that you're working on a formal procedure.
Procedural processes for that. It's hard to monitor because there's so many different websites. But we're working through that.
All right. Any further questions, comments? On 82, 20 page 203. I did have a, go ahead. And I'm looking at the last half of C. Let's see, the specific manner in which donated funds are expended for a designated purpose will be determined under the direction of the superintendent. Why did they strike or principal? I understand the superintendent having the final say. Does that mean,
To the previous page, there's a statement that says the principal does not have the authority to accept donations to the school. So I would think that's why they struck principal.
so that principal, whoever he might be or she, would communicate with Dr. Williamson, and then Dr. Williamson would give final approval or non-approval and convey that back, and that would be what would go.
Yes.
In a lot of cases, we have to be concerned about how those funds are generated. We want to make sure it's not a violation of some of our policies. And so that is a good practice. And then that overall conversation of, if you're going to make a donation, it is to the public schools of Robinson County. There's no side deal that we promise we're going to put this on a building or that. And all that's for our protection. So that we can monitor, make sure we are, but we have to be concerned as a public school system where those funds come from,
Right,
always.
right. Makes perfect sense. Okay. Okay, we're still under 8220, moving on to 303. Most of the language there that's in red has been stricken. The part that remains is under number 9, installation of major donations that will become permanent part of school facility grants such as playground equipment, bleachers, scoreboards, outdoor lights and fences. The superintendent designee must approve the design, location, construction materials. And my question there, that's very broad. And we know, Dr. Williamson, you cannot micromanage everything that comes along. You've got people that are very capable to make those kinds of decisions. But my question is there some kind of rubric or a chart about what types of materials and construction is acceptable and what's not? Is there some kind of reference to that?
There is, and Bobby may want to speak to it. We normally send that request, that information to the Department of Public Instruction or school planning.
So anything that would be major that they're listing here must get approval from DPI. And so they're going to go through and make sure that it meets all of their requirements prior to it being constructed or installed at the school.
In fact, Bobby just submitted 2 DPI playground equipment requests. They have responded, and they had one question. I think it was how
The poles were going to be mounted or secured in the ground. And so I've talked with the contractor. He's getting all of that information to them today and tomorrow.
Great. Okay, any further questions, comments on policy 8220? Hearing none, do I hear a motion?
The amount, back in section B.
Oh, okay, thank you. All right, and Ms. Erica answered that for us in that, but we do have to approve it, of course. The 90,000 that would be inserted
It will go in both places.
in both planes, yeah. Thank you, Hugh. With that addition or change or insertion, is everybody good with that? And any other questions or comments?
Gentry,
Yes, sir.
got a question on that B part. Ms. Erica, where you mentioned, under it B, and I know how I come in late, the principal does not have the authority to accept a donation to the school. So that's the case now, a principal can't take nothing, a donation to the school, Ms. Erica?
That's new.
That's new.
That's new.
So, and the one that pops in my mind is county commissioners coming and making a donation, so that no longer could be accepted.
Is that the recommendation from the,
From the school board?
board?
Yes. And remember that principal, because it's in yellow, was our addition there.
Yeah, I really hadn't thought of that part, Mr. Craig, but that is new. That is not something that we had that was previously in the,
I will just say, and being an ex, county commissioners over the years have helped quite a few schools with that discretionary fund
Right.
that they would give money to the school for. And a lot of times it was whatever if you talked to them, it was something, if you needed at your school and they come up with the discretionary money, they would give it to you and pretty much had leeway in how you would spend it.
Yeah, they come out and hand you a check.
Oh, yeah,
and I don't know if we have any.
Came just in time.
That statement.
I'm just, that might be worth looking at if it can be done.
Yeah, I think that's just semantics of how we say it, that we move away from the give language into a funding, because normally with commissioners, every issue is a funding issue. So I don't think it restricts and stops from doing that. I think it's the language that we use. Because you see that from the General Assembly, right, through their process.
Yes.
We're just, so I think the language that we receive those funds.
So Dr. Williamson, does that mean that, and I understand what Mr. Craig is saying, because
Right,
a lot of times those checks
Right.
handed from the commissioner to the principal, seem to hit at just the right time. So you're saying that under this, with this language, that process is still acceptable?
Yes.
Okay.
That's my interpretation of it,
Okay.
that we don't want to lose that.
Yeah, it's a personal bond and relationship when that,
That's
he
right.
comes out there and he's made the special effort to come out to the school.
I agree. And I think what the policy is saying, that those transactions should not happen without the district level knowledge of that, is what it's basically saying. Because certainly we wouldn't oppose that, we would approve it, but we just need knowledge of that, because things could pop up on the campus, you wonder how, and when you dig into it, you realize.
So the principal in turn should report to Miss Erica that, hey, Commissioner, whoever came out here today and gave us $1,000. There should be a line of communication with that.
And I may be able to get that directly from Ms. Kinlaw, who's the financial director, without it impacting something the principals have to do. I can discuss that with her and see if she's willing to share that. That way she can just give me a copy of everything instead of each individual report. She would be responsible for writing those checks.
Two things that come up a lot is, we got funds coming in to pay for most everything. But if you want to do something for staff, you can't use those X dollars that's for reading or math or science. And the commissioners were good about donating, with my experience for stuff like that, or athletics. Now, you can't use money in math for athletics, but if you needed help, I found with uniforms or equipment or sometimes they were good in helping with things like that you couldn't take that other money. But
Right.
give a donation and you tell them what you're doing it and they would work with you on that. I'd hate to see us lose that.
Yeah, I don't think we have to,
Okay.
and it's just that we need notification.
Now, clarification, like, we got 2,500 the other day from one of the businesses. But we have to do it every time we get something like that? I mean,
You're running it through your funds and not your booster?
it's run through our funds, yeah, because they donate to the
This
school.
is.
Yeah,
That's not currently in place, but that's what this is.
that's,
That's just good accounting practices,
Yes.
in terms of audit and all of that. Money,
that's fine. I
we need,
email on
that's
that.
all that is.
And so I guess I have that same question. So if, for example, fraternities and sororities are donating funds to the school as well, that once again, just, you need to be notified of that.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, not gonna stop it. We just add an extra step just for notification purposes. That's fine. I mean, that's,
Correct.
Okay.
Chair, I move approval of policy 8220.
8220.
Second.
Second. Discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. No? Okay, 8230 is a brief paragraph relating to Article 9, Section 7. North Carolina Constitution requires all clear proceeds of all penalties, fines. I'll read all that. Be forwarded to county funds. And then word revised, but I don't see any actual revision.
All they did in that one was just add what they're calling the Oxford comma.
Okay, okay, I see that now. Thank you. I see it now. All right. All right, all in favor of that? Is I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, we'll move on to 8300. I have and I'm jumping down, and we can go back to anything that anyone wants to bring up. But a lot of these, I just need to be educated. And I'm looking at number 3, the last sentence, the finance officer shall also report to the secretary of the local government commission. Is that the same thing as the county commission?
No, sir, that's the LGC, the local government commission. And there are a couple of reports that we have to send to them semi-annually. December, we have to send them a report of the cash we have on hand and all the schools have on hand. And we also have to do that in July for June 30th. So as of December the 31st and as of June 30th of each year, we have to rescind, it's called the LGC 203 report that we have to send to them semi-annually. And I'm assuming that's what that's referring to.
And that's comprised of what entities? The local government commission?
The local government commission is, it's under the Department of State Treasurer.
Yeah.
The LGC is responsible for monitoring all of our fiscal audits, all of our debt for the schools. They work in conjunction with the county commissioners and the school system to ensure that we're all meeting, doing everything we're supposed to be doing policy-wise.
Are they based here in Robeson County, or is that
Yes, sir.
in Raleigh?
Raleigh.
Okay.
So in effect, they have knowledge of our fund balance
That's correct.
to pay bills.
Correct. And we're required to send the balances of all of our schools in that report as well. As of those certain points in the year, as of December 31st and as of June 30th.
Of each individual school?
Yes. That is included on that report as well.
Okay, and to me, and again, any comments, discussions, questions, but the rest of the language in red seems to be very straightforward to me in terms of processes, what has to happen. For example, I'm just around a little bit. Number 5, all receipts and disbursements will be accounted for according to generally accepted accounting principles for government entities.
Everything else is pretty straightforward in the policy.
Yeah. Are there any? That's one page. That one page is 8,300. Or any other questions, comments? Not. I hear a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, 8305, Federal Grant Administration.
Everything's
Miss Erica,
straightforward there.
I just had I realize there's an audit process to any and all things financial. This speaks to federal funds specifically. Is there a special auditor that's a federal auditor that audits the federal programs?
Well, we have compliance and monitoring for certain federal programs every year. And our independent audit always looks at federal programs as part of that audit. But then the Department of Public Instruction can come in anytime and audit any funds that they choose. Normally, they group them together based on, just like with the COVID, their funds, they have the titles. So depending on how we submit the applications is normally how they come and audit. So it can be an individual where they're just looking at one program, or it can be consolidated and they let us know which individual programs they're looking at. So
That's general procedure. That's not, okay, there's a red flag. It's just,
that's correct. That's general procedure. They're required by all of these federal rules to have a compliance and monitoring program in place.
okay. Any other questions on 83? Well, the 8305 continues for several pages here. Page 2 of 6. And I had a question here, and again, I'm still learning. I know there's a mix between our purchases that we're bound by state contract to use certain entities that are under state contract versus open competition from any and all, or ones that, or vendors or contractors that are approved. There's a mix there, right? It's not all one or the other.
That's correct.
In the case where there's a state contractor or vendor that's side by side for our business with a private one, are we not bound to go with the state?
You're not required to use the state contract, but it behooves you to do so because the state has already done the bidding work for you and awarded it to a vendor. So if they're on a state contract, that means that we don't have to go out and do our own bid process.
Gotcha. And it's the sentence in red in number 3 reiterates or emphasizes that a manner providing full and open competition in accordance with uniform guidance.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The federal funds have a completely separate dollar threshold to where you have to perform different procurement procedures than state funds do.
Okay, and then there's a paragraph addressing individuals, organizations, contracts. To me, it all looks straightforward there. Red contract shall contain all provisions required by 2 CFR Part 200. Okay, there is no language in red in 8305, page 3 of 6. And then moving on to 4 of 6. Language in red addresses the types of reports that are subject to being submitted and monitored. In paragraph 8, and audits and corrective action. It just adds a little emphasis to some of the procedures that are already in place. Little language that, or appropriate language that emphasizes those requirements. 8305, there's just one sentence in red addressing policies protecting confidentiality of personal personally identify information, other sensitive information. Okay, and then, on 83056, there are some, funding websites that are stricken, and there are 2 that remain. Or any other questions, comments on 8305?
Clerk, let me ask, just for general information, we're not bound by any law that would force us to take the lowest bid. It's the lowest reasonable bid to safeguard against someone bidding and then going through the change order process.
That's correct. Reasonable is always a part of that, statement. It's reasonable. And responsible. And responsible. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm not thinking about any entity in particular, but if you discover that, a particular entity is not following, acceptable or legal policies, but it's incumbent upon us to know that, right? To investigate. And there are ways, as you know, to investigate various firms and entities, make sure that all their work and policies and everything about them is above board.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Any questions on 8305? Your motion for approval.
So moved.
Second, all in favor say aye. Aye, those opposed no. 8310.
It's our practice now,
Yeah, that's already the current practice, so
move that we approve of 8310.
Second, all in favor say aye. Aye, those opposed no. 8325. This speaks to deposits of daily deposits, whether by individual schools or the central office. That is,
Mr. Gentry, there was just one part, where it talked about all funds must be deposited by 2 p.m. A lot of that's kind of going away now. The banks will make it effective same day, so they don't have that timeline anymore. That's the only recommendation that, we wanted to recommend, just to say must be deposited before close of business or something like that, instead of specifying a 2 p.m. deadline, because that is not effective anymore.
maybe the original reason for that is that deposit after 2 p.m. will be credited on the next business day. Is that?
That's the way it used to be.
That's the way it used to be. A lot of the banks now make funds available same day. That's a banking practice that has.
Regardless of, if it's still.
Well, I'm sure they have.
Bank closes, you're good, is that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
It just changed 2 p.m. into before closing.
All right. Any further questions on 8325? Hearing none. Your motion for approval,
I request we approve as amended.
okay? Second, all in favor say aye. Aye, those opposed no. 8330. And this addresses the use of, signature machines, which have become pretty much commonplace in their usage. However, and this paragraph addresses that, that it says a finance officer, and this applies to central office only. Individual schools don't have this, right? signature machines?
Some of them may have stamps, but, they don't have it. Most of them sign it themselves. They
Okay.
don't have a machine, like we have a check overlay that has a digital signature. Schools do not have that.
Any comments, questions? Here, motion for approval, 8330.
So moved.
Second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, this one, 8340. This is, insurance. And this, to me, is very straightforward as well.
It is.
Any red flags or anything that we would need to question? I don't, but someone else does. We hear a motion for approval for 8340. Okay, second, all in favor say aye. Approved. All right, 8341. Let me just ask another question here. What is our track record in regard to lawsuits from individuals or class action lawsuits? Do we have a?
The attorney would probably be better suited to answer that question than we would, because even a lot of times we're not privy to, you and the board attorney are privy to. We just pay the bills associated with the outcomes, but.
A lot of any issues that come up, hopefully, I'm sure the vast majority of them are resolved and don't proceed further
That's correct.
legal forum. I do have a question about, I think this has been addressed, and I maybe have asked this question before. Are board members covered with liability?
Yes.
Through the school board.
As a board and individually, or just as a board?
That may depend on the type of case as it comes up. So if it has something with the system and your role as a board member with the school system versus any type of thing, private issue outside of the school system, the attorney would probably be better suited to answer that question for you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Any further questions? And to me, the rest of the language in 8341 appears to be very straightforward. No further questions. Do I hear a motion for approval for 8341?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. We're going to 83. It's assets inventory. This is your department. Do you see anything here that,
No, sir.
to me, again, that seems very straightforward. There's nothing in red. So, no questions, comments. I hear approval for, motion for approval for 8350.
So moved.
Second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Motion carries. And Ms. Erica, here's your department, School Finance Officer, 8510.
Everything there looks,
This chart had 84.
We're following all of that, just all that, right, in terms of the processes.
No action.
we could, Mr. Gentry, go back to 8410. There's nothing in the book on it. Mr. Moore has brought up a point about our that, so how we can all look at it, it's not in this book, read it to us.
I just want to read the statement here. Our current policy under individual school accounts, it says the board authorizes the maintenance of appropriate individual school accounts. All employees and volunteers who handle checks, receipts, deposits, money, or financial records related to the individual school accounts are expected to be familiar with all applicable laws, board policies. The only thing I don't like about that sentence is the way it started. It said all employees and volunteers. We should not have volunteers handling our funds. I would just like to have volunteers taken out
Stricken from that policy.
and just be all employees who handle checks, receipts, and deposits. Because you wouldn't want, as a principal, you wouldn't want someone on the street making your deposits for you or writing your checks or collecting money.
Even a volunteer that's been approved.
No volunteers. That's my only.
Well, I agree, and as you said, this was not in the manual for today, but nevertheless, you were reading that right off your,
Off the school policy website.
seeing from the computer. Bobby, you making a note of that?
84.
Yeah, very good, thank you. Any further questions or any questions about 85? Blue, my interpretation of the blue is it's not recommended for additions or changes, it's just for emphasis. Am I on the right track with the blue, why it's in blue? I mean, there's nothing that I would see. I've read this several times. It's just procedures that I'm sure Ms. Erica's already following.
Yes, sir.
Okay? Hearing no questions, do I hear a motion for approval of 8510? Second, all in favor say aye. Aye. School treasurer. And this just lists the duties. There's nothing in red. Your approval, a motion for approval, 8520.
So moved.
Second, all in favor say aye. Aye. The 9,000 planning to address facility needs. And this is very applicable right now because I know we do have a number of new buildings that are slated for construction. Don't see anything, there's nothing in red on page 1 of 2. On page 2 of 2, there's a sentence in red that's, or partial sentence that's stricken. The whole sentence, all professional contracts must be approved by the board. What do we have in lieu of that? If all professional contracts are not, don't have to be approved by the board, who has that responsibility? Superintendent. Okay. All right. Any comments, questions on 9,000? Hearing none, I hear a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second, all in favor say aye. 9010. What is our procedure on acquiring property and buildings currently? Is this as stated in red? We're beginning with, one, of course, reviewed by the board attorney, be approved by the board unless the board has delegated this authority to the superintendent based on policy 6420. What is our current status with that?
And that is not the case. Policy 6420.
I think is it. This is the one that goes back to the $90,000 and that it must be approved by the board.
Move approval of the
Okay.
policy as with requirement of the board.
Sounds good. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, no. 9020. Fine. It seems very thorough, on page 1 of 2, relative to the nature and the design of facilities. And I'm sure that you have a procedure, the way you handle that, and I've already experienced that from being with you when we've been visiting proposed sites. There's a very good, thorough process, checks and balances there.
Requesting approval 9020.
Second, all in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. 9020 is approved. Facility construction. This is where it gets, some of this terminology was, full over my head, but, there's quite a bit of red, language in red here, especially about change orders. Change orders mentioned several times. Let me just ask a question about change. I understand the concept of change orders, but when a change order is requested by a contractor, does that actually open the door for previous bidders to come back and submit another bid?
No.
But now there's a limit to the amount that exceeds the original contract. He has to stay within a certain percentage or a certain amount of the original bid, right? He can't just say, the original bid was $100,000, and we got a change order and we got to add 25, 30,000 more. Is it, okay, 25,000, I'm looking at it right now, okay.
But that number needs to be changed. Most districts use somewhere between $300,000 and $500,000.
Wow, big difference.
To answer your question about the change order, let's say the bill's 100,000 and say for those type of windows right there. But now we decided to change that and make the entire wall one big glass area. Now that's what it's a change order. You have changed from what your original bid was for the materials or the design. And that would be the reason for the additional amount of money if you did a change order. Or it could be that we ordered those windows and say they were priced during the bid for $1,000, and now they have increased to $5,000 because of material increases and stuff.
That's the key thing too. He's got to submit evidence that his change order was reasonable. It's not just, okay, it's more money. You know, he's got to validate it, document it.
Right.
Okay.
And there could be unforeseens that you didn't know about too that caused change orders. There's all kind of variables.
It's like when we had the roof done at St. Paul's, then they found out all the fascia boards are rotting out, so then they had to do a change order to try to get it fixed.
Right.
They found it when they were doing the other part.
And so those recommendations normally come from our architect engineering firm that we use to do that. That's where that originates from. That's what I look at in terms of, and Bobby looked at in terms of, this is their recommendation, so this is what I'm signing off on. So it's not something that we determine, but they determine that for us.
They validate it,
Right, they validate,
The state,
the engineers.
the engineers.
the engineer.
Now, what, does the state have a say in this?
Well, it all depends. I mean, I don't know.
Gotta be-
Altering,
Got to, yeah, the original design has got to be approved by the state, right?
It depends
Right.
on the type of project we're talking about. If you're talking about building an addition to a school, it just depends. There's certain rules of things that have to be submitted to DPI and then other things don't. It just depends on the type of, the individual project.
How extensive it is for one reason.
Correct.
Okay, so do we need to,
And if you'll.
do that right now, what you were just recommending?
Number 2 actually talks about that $300,000.
Okay,
with,
okay.
additional requirements for contracts in excess of 300,000. So by default, that is what they're suggesting, that the other amounts where we have 25 should be 300. That's what number 2 is.
Okay. So I'm still confused. Do we need to go back and strike the 25,000?
Sir.
Okay, and to 300,000,
That's correct.
okay.
And that's needed. That would clear up some questions we had. What is the cap on change order? Anything beyond the 300,000, obviously, it goes before the board. The 300,000 allow us to not lose time, 30 days of time on change orders. And school system operate with the 300,000. Out of that, you gotta clear through the board.
And there's also an indication, even if it was over 300, that the superintendent, if the superintendent's opinion says the change order requires an expedited review, that the superintendent can notify the board chair, who will decide whether a meeting should be called to address it. That's also the language that they suggest put C. It's in that last paragraph.
That's necessary. We just went through that process and it was necessary to do that and we gathered a lot of information. So if we need to call those kinds of meetings.
So in that event, it's the discretion of a decision or discretion between the board chair and the superintendent,
Special
the
meeting.
special meeting. Okay. All right. Okay, so we'll move from that page to one of, okay, well, that concludes that section. 9030, any other,
Entry, just to be clear, the blank, Erica, we're doing 90,000 there.
300.
3,
300?
90/30, there's not a blank. It's currently in yellow with 25.
I can put 25 and
look
insert it.
down the 4th line in C.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that one needs to be changed to 300 as well, is that right?
Their recommendation
What's their
Yeah,
recommendation?
to exceed.
that it matches 64 community.
Not on this one.
6420 was 90,000, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Erica, help me now, as we read that line, it's basically said that we have, a budget approved with the cap on the budget, that as long as we stay under that cap,
That's correct. That's what that's saying.
that's,
That it's on a contract that has not been previously approved by the board, but we will have it approved by the board.
if we're over budget and anticipate we're gonna be over budget, it takes board approval to do that.
The contract. Yeah, right, not the 90,000, to enter into contracts, and this is not part of entering into.
So what
Right,
are we saying should go there?
So the only way we're amending this or editing this is with those two figures. We're putting, 300,000 in the blank, or not the blank, but where 25,000 is highlighted in yellow, and we're putting 90,000 on the fourth line where the blank is. Is that right?
I think we should do 300 in the blank too, but if they're recommending something different, I don't know if we need to have that discussion with them first, but I would think we would change the 225s to 300 and also put 300 in the blank.
Yeah, I think so too. Any further discussion, questions, comments?
Mr. Gentry, just
Sir.
real clear. If, we bid a project out and it comes up in the project that there's a change order comes down here to Dr. Williamson, and as long as that change order is less than 300,000, you have the authority to go ahead and approve it. And then the board would be notified. Now, let's say they come in down here with a change order for $1 million. Then it's gonna come in front of the board. They're gonna have to show why or what they're wanting to do.
That's correct. And that may happen in that special call meeting rather than in an open.
Right. That the chair and the superintendent can agree to have.
Now, does that mean, assuming it's a big project, does that mean all construction stops then, or just construction related to that area where the change order is?
I think related to the area of the change order.
Until they get the authority to go forward.
Okay, any further questions, discussions? Is there a motion to approve 9030 as amended?
So move.
Second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Move on to 9110. I did not see anything myself. 9110 seemed to be very straightforward.
10 is straightforward.
It outlines the requirements for various entities involved in the completion of the project, which is consistent with GS 115C-52. Okay, and that in 9110 goes through page 3 of 3. And any comments, questions on 9110? Not, do I hear a motion for approval?
So move.
Second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Move on to 9120. Here's another blank. It requires a figure on page 3 of 4. I would say we would need to insert 300,000 there as well. Be consistent.
Now, their recommendation is 50,000. Where Mr. Grady, where the attorney would get in and approve and look at the contract prior to us entering it.
Whose recommendation?
The school board.
Policy 9120.
Yes, sir. They're 9120, they're recommending, we recommend the amount not to exceed $50,000 unless your system regularly and consistently engages in construction contracts valued at 25 million or more per year.
Bobby, if I'm not mistaken, didn't that 50,000 come about several years ago? Is this the one where that was put in? I mean,
Well, the blank section is new. That's not currently in an old policy. They added that part and added.
they added, I'm trying to remember, and this before I got here, there's some discussion about that the maximum the superintendent could do was 50,000 without board approval. If it's not here, but somewhere that would be.
That's in 9110.
9110.
Three.
So the 50,000 is lining up with 9110.
And one,
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
303, Mr. Gray.
That's the estimated special fee. This is authority to the superintendent. Well, let's say it's delegated.
That's different.
Policy
That
64.
I just remember something coming up many years
I
ago.
would suggest we use the school board's
Yeah, just do the 50.
recommendation.
50,000.
50,000?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems to me like we're shooting ourselves in the foot. If we got 300,000, this is basically, to me, speaking the same language.
It is.
I mean, we've got 300,000.
It does say that this is separate from change orders. Change orders will be subject to the requirement of policy 9030.
I think this is like the initial one. It's up to
Initial one, which we would bring those before the board anyway.
Okay.
entering into construction or repair contract. With change order.
And then the third, you see the third bullet there where it says at least monthly, our report. We can insert a dollar amount there, or if we choose, we can take that out.
Where are you, Bobby?
And that's under F.
That's part of our reporting monthly.
Superintendent shall report board all contracts approved by the superintendent under policy that exceed 50?
We determined that there, and like Dr. Williamson said, if we're already doing it, do we want to put a specific dollar amount there? Do we want to take that statement out altogether?
Superintendent.
Yeah, our practice is we need to report it as part of our reporting and follow the 50,000 recommendation, which I would ask the board to approve anyway, so it's not an issue.
So that's, we're thinking then that statement is redundant and it's already covered in the previous language. Am I interpreting that right?
You just say remove it, Dr. Williamson, because it's already covered in another policy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right then. Any other comments, questions? Recommended additions for 9120? If not, do I hear a motion that we approve it? That we strike the last sentence in F on page 4? That
So-
addition?
I so move that we do striking
Okay.
the last sentence and the cap at $50,000.
Okay, thank you. Second, all in favor say aye. Aye, those opposed, no. All right, that brings us to 9125. Language in red here, but, my opinion, now, there is a lot here. I was a little concerned, not concerned, but, interested in, and I'm glad to see the provision to include, minority businesses, and that's addressed a number of times in this particular section. I did have an asterisk, my, The second paragraph on page 3 or 4 of 9125, the level of minority participation in bidders' bids will not affect contract award decision. However, the failure to provide documentation of good faith effort to meet the board's goal may result in the bid being non-responsive. I'm not sure I understand exactly what is a non-responsive bid?
Where you don't receive anything. Where you don't receive anything.
You don't receive anything?
Yeah, you put something.
Non-responsive means you sent out a request for responses and you didn't get any in return.
Okay. That's what it said. That's what it said. Okay. I guess what prompted me to ask that, how far, and don't get me wrong, I'm all for minorities to bid on any project that might come up. But to what extent are we responsible to solicit minority bids? Just a general posting of, or advertising, or is that all? And if you don't get any response, whoever, after a certain period of time, you go ahead. I mean, there's no fine print requirement. All right.
And this policy really supports small local businesses. You helped me, I don't see the bonded language, so they need to be bonded. Or is that not a requirement? Help me with that. That's our protection, right?
Correct.
Now, being bonded, does that mean that they're, I realize that covers any liabilities that may occur, whether it be injuries to persons or whether it be failure of a part or all of the construction. My goodness, heaven forbid, we hear about very regularly about buildings, defects in buildings and collapsing and people getting hurt and killed.
And usually when they're put out for bid, those type of jobs, the engineer also has in there, you have to provide your types of insurance, that your bonded liabilities, your workers' comp, auto, they have to provide all that with their bid or else it's automatically rejected.
Does it include disastrous events like what we all know about?
What, a tornado?
Well, no, not a tornado. I'm talking about like a collapsed building.
Yes, it would fall back on them on all that. Yes. There are level inspections during the construction process as well, either by the local building inspectors or the engineering inspectors.
Gotcha. Cover all the bases.
Yes.
All right. Any further questions, comments on 9125? Hearing none, I hear a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second, all in favor say aye. 9130. Change orders again, the red language on the second paragraph. And to me, that was already thoroughly covered in the previous section. Iterating that, it does provide a cross-reference with the Board Policy 6420, Facility Construction 9030. Any questions, comments on that? I think that's well covered. Ready?
Move for approval.
Okay, second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those no, motion carries. 9200. We're on page 1 or 2, care and maintenance of facilities. Most of this is in yellow for emphasis. The proposed addition, of course, is in red. First paragraph, to maintain the school system facility. The board strives to maintain the school system facilities in good condition and order. Goes on. And then coming all the way down to the instructions to the principal, she cannot accomplish correction of a defect, he or she shall notify the superintendent immediately of unsanitary conditions, repairs needed. Any employee who observes potential hazard shall notify his or her supervisor or principal immediately. Potential hazards or recommended safety precautions must be posted. Hugh, I'll ask you this, is this practice being followed
Yes.
consistently? When there's a hazard, there's a sign posted as such?
Yes. Principals are required to do their monthly safety inspections.
Right. Okay. Any other questions on 9200? None, motion for approval.
So moved.
Second, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion is approved for acceptance. Pest management, there's really not any, language in red here. I do have a concern, though. I experienced this, and I would say all of us who were in buildings, what I'm getting at is personnel bringing their own spray can and spraying it at will to get rid of ants or whatever. That's not allowed, right? You're not supposed to be bringing a can of Raid and spraying, because if you see an ant, and sometimes we know it, these schools that are built on slabs, most of them are, some of the older ones got ant hills that can come up in the room sometimes. But, and I realize that could be an emergency, but in that event, especially if they're fire ants, those students need to be relocated to another location. What I'm getting at is nobody bringing their own pesticides to school. And I think it covers that. So. All right.
Chair move for approval.
Move approval. Second, all in favor say aye. 9205, move to 9210. It's just a highlight in yellow there. Principal responsible for initiating appropriate action to secure proper maintenance. Goes out saying, but it's reiterating that the principal cannot accomplish corrective effects or notice by the superintendent. Repairs needed to meet safety standards. That's straightforward.
Chair move for approval.
Second, all in favor say aye. Aye. 9220. And to me, that's very straightforward too. I did not see any need for any additions there. Right, hear a motion for approval for 9220.
So moved.
Second, all in favor say aye. That brings us to the last page, 9300. It's a very timely one because it's on our agenda tomorrow night about naming a facility after a full person, staff member, case soccer coach who is very well respected, hired. There's a process to this. There has to be a public forum before it can come to pass. That's what I'm picking up from this. So this, obviously that will not happen for some time to come, the public forum part. It goes into some detail about the characteristics of the person being honored. Wait. And it does outline the steps. So to me, it's very straightforward. And again, we're addressing this caveat of what's yet to happen in this process. So is there a motion for approval for 9300?
So moved.
Second, all in favor say aye.
Answer one quick question, for me. Mr. Bobby, the top of, that 9220, storage of records, all the files that's at schools, are they in fireproof cabinets to the best of y'all's knowledge? They're not. As I would just say, if it's required or not here, if, I don't know what the expense would be, but might be something we need to look at because of stuff like that happening. I know a lot of it now is, I guess, on computer or stuff like that, but if they got records there, at the school, if we could look at what it would be to get fireproof cabinets for those records, it might be valuable down the road if something would happen.
Case in point, I speak of personal reference here. I graduated from Lumberton High School in 1968. In 1979, there was a fire started in the records room, and all of those paper records were destroyed. That time, there was no computerization.
Not then.
I have no personal school record that I can go back and look at. And there's hundreds of others in that same situation.
Had the same issue, you know, with Hurricane Matthew. We lost all the
Right.
files with water, and some of them were in fireproof cabinets, but fireproof cabinets don't help
Don't
with
have
water.
water. No.
Is there such a thing where a cabinet,
Not that I know of,
Floodproof.
that I'm aware of.
Two to that, Jason, help me. Aren't we in the process of getting all of our old high school records, the scribbles,
Yeah, all those are there, but what he's talking about is more like the ones,
like our live records?
our live records are, like I said, ours are in old fireproof, but you can't lock them, can't do anything. I don't know how really fireproof it is because, I mean,
Yeah, they might not, there might be new codes for them by now, yeah.
We just purchased some for the board.
Mhm.
Period.
Yes, we're trying to move everything in HR to fireproof.
Fireproof. Like what Mr. Gentry said, when the schools that's been closed, I'm gonna say Orem High School, Prospect High School, most of those records, from the schools when they existed, they were left at those schools. And my experience is most of those cabinets are probably not fireproof because, you know, nobody very seldom graduated from Prospect in 1960. Somebody comes out there and needs something. And that does happen occasionally. And a lot of those probably are not fireproof, but
I think they're in the process also of putting those with scribbles.
They are.
they already?
Yeah.
Okay,
They are.
well, good.
And we're working, Janelle, if I'm not mistaken, is working with the middle schools to get
Okay.
the, like Orem and Prospect, Magnolia, that were high school,
Right,
to get those records transferred into scribbles as well.
We've done ours already at Pembroke, Mr. Bobby.
okay.
them transferred into what?
Scribbles, it is what,
It's a company out of Charlotte, but basically what they do is they come in, they take all your records and they don't digitize all of them at first. What they do is as people pay for them, you start building up money, then they turn them to digital records, but they house everything. And basically what happens, a kid goes on, asks for a transcript, it goes to the company sends it to us, and we tell them, you know, basically what box it was and, you know, everything, because we got to keep records of that, what box it was, where it's at, and they get it and send it to us electronically, and we can send it to wherever.
But a big problem at our schools and here is
Storage
itself.
space.
I mean,
Yeah.
just getting fireproof cabinets is not gonna be the solution to the issue of storage.
Nowhere to store it.
There's nowhere to store it.
Yeah, because you're talking about in our records room, there were 70, I believe, filing cabinets full, and we had some stacked on top of that. So, I mean, it was a storage issue more than anything.
Well, I mean, natural law says if you stack up stuff long enough, you're gonna run out of space. That's just the way things are. Okay, are there any other comments, questions? For the good of the policies, for the good of public schools of Robertson County. Thank you all for being here. So I hear no comments or questions. Motion. Adjourned.
9,400 is in the book. I mean, it's listed in this table of contents, but it wasn't in this book. Sale and disposal of board on real property. I didn't see it in my book other than for it listed there. I didn't actually see a copy of it to go over.
Cole, can I email that to you real quick?
It looks pretty straightforward, though. I just want to make sure we list all of them. It just reiterates talking about, we have to give the county commissioners the first opportunity to obtain property.
$9,400, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
That might come into play with, I would assume eventually the site where the central office was located. That's just one example. There's some others. That will come up, would be placed on the market at some point, will it not?
We should demo that.
Yeah, once
Land
it's,
itself, but as far as everything there, we would demo. And then, depending on the outcome of our FEMA lawsuit, it may be where you can't build anything there. I don't know. We're still waiting to see.
everything what's called green space, once they pay you for a building to be demolished, it has to be turned to green space.
Gotcha.
It's in the correlation table, but it doesn't appear to be in the zip file of the individual policies.
You emailed it to me, Bobby. I got it.
I just emailed it to you, Cole.
Any other comments, questions, issues
Answers
to
to
address?
asbestos, right?
Okay, move it for, move.
George School asked me,
I know it is.
but you know.
They move.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Not quick.
Thank you again.